12 hours. That's how long it took for Earth to respond. Not with missiles, not with fire, at first, but with silence so thick the Order of Harmonious Systems mistook it for compliance. High Minister Gilix of the OHS personally congratulated Fleet 9 on what he called a surgically precise disruption of proto-insurrectionist youth conditioning. He even held a press conference next to a glowing holomap labeled Target Hollow River Indoctrination Node. What the holomap failed to mention was that the node was actually a peaceful, heavily wooded care sanctuary for neurodivergent and disabled children, nestled by a river that real children painted in soft watercolors. It didn't show the therapy dogs, the sensory gardens, or Ms. Imani, who read bedtime stories every night, because she believed kindness was a valid security system. Gilix didn't know any of that. None of them did. Their intelligence system, bless its bureaucratic heart, had interpreted a crayon drawing of a spaceship on a school wall as child-led weapons design. When the orbital strike hit, it vaporized 312 children, 87 caretakers, and the last quiet place on Earth that believed empathy was a superpower. And still, the humans said nothing. No angry broadcasts, no protests, just a pause. Somewhere. In that void, a retired U.S. Navy SEAL named Rena Chase finished her morning run, looked at the news alert, and quietly took her old armor out of storage. She didn't weep. She'd done that already. Years ago, when her best friend died and left behind those kids, each one handpicked, each one with a story Rena knew by heart. When Earth's Council reached out, she was already halfway to orbital. HQ, her only reply, "They touched Hollow River, then we touched their legacy." 12 hours and 1 minute after the strike, every major human network blinked to life. A child's voice, clear and calm, filled alien airwaves. "You killed the wrong kids." No music, no threats, just that sentence. Then a smiling girl, no older than 11, tilted her head and added, "We're invoking Clause 0. She ended transmission with a fart sound and a thumbs up. Somewhere deep in OHS Central Command, someone asked what Clause 0 was. No one knew. But across the galaxy, every human warship began transmitting old kindergarten drawings of the Hollow. River Sanctuary, each accompanied by full names and recorded laughter of the lost children. Commander Rena Chase stood aboard the HMS Glitter Fury, which had a glowing stuffed unicorn welded to its prow, staring out into the stars with eyes like cold thunder. Her armor gleamed, a patch reading Orphan Avenger stitched onto the shoulder, right above the initials of the kids she'd once helped babysit during shore leave. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just whispered into the comms. "We don't do shock and awe. We do slow and shame." And so, with a soft hum of engines and a burning sense of purpose, humanity began its approach. Not for war, but for a reckoning no alien species had ever prepared for. The full wrath of weaponized compassion paired with millennia of emotional storage and a truly unhinged sense of humor. The Order had made a mistake, and some mistakes, as they were about to learn, are final. The Order of Harmonious Systems expected diplomacy. They expected back-channel apologies, perhaps a strongly worded memo, maybe even a token demand for reparations. What they got instead was silence. Again. A silence that was busy. It was building. On the fourth day, as the OHS prepared an internal review titled Human Response Potential, Likely Mild Annoyance, a fleet the size of their fiscal spreadsheet materialized just outside regulated border space. It looked like an aesthetic nightmare. Earth's finest mix of repurposed freighters, retrofitted cruisers, orbital scrapyard miracles, and ships that seemed to be glued together by raw spite and duct tape. They weren't sleek, they weren't elegant, but they were real. Alive. Behind them trailed an endless stream of broadcast drones, each one armed not with weapons, but with footage. Footage of children laughing, painting, dancing badly to old. Earth pop songs. One drone focused on a finger-painted sign that read, "Ms. Imani says aliens are just friends we haven't hugged yet." Another showed a birthday party, where a boy in a wheelchair wore a pirate hat and declared himself Admiral Giggles. These weren't propaganda clips. These were memories. And they came with names, voices, and heartbreak so thick even alien translators began choking on the emotion. OHS citizens started defecting, not militarily, but emotionally. Entire planets shut off state media and tuned into the human grief channel just to cry. Commander Rena Chase hadn't said a word publicly yet. She didn't need to. The universe was watching a eulogy of the innocent, and behind it, something sharper. Sarcasm sharpened to a scalpel edge. Alien meme nets, once sterile, now overflowed with earthborn satire. One clip showed an OHS training officer struggling to understand human tactics, labeled, "How to Lose a War in 3 Bureaucratic Meetings or Less." Another showed High Minister Gillix's smug press conference, edited so every time he said, "Precision." "Strike!" It played a clip of a crying child clutching a singed teddy bear. Beneath the memes came policy. Earth didn't negotiate, they announced. A universal broadcast declared the activation of the righteous bastard protocol. In typical human fashion, no one explained what that meant. It sounded like a threat. It was a threat. One that came wrapped in politeness and sharp grins. On day 7, Rena arrived in OHS space, uninvited, wearing a diplomatic armor suit tailored like a business dress with armored heels and a glowing sash that read, Clause 0 Enforcement Agent. The council summoned her under protest, expecting outrage, negotiation, perhaps a tantrum. She gave them a spreadsheet. "This is a list," she said casually, "of 6,019 names. Every person directly or indirectly responsible for the decision to fire. We'll need them delivered within 36 hours, or we start court-martialing planets alphabetically." The room erupted. Gillix demanded an explanation. Rena's only reply was, "You filed a war crime under urban education reform, so I filed your response under cute but dead." She turned to leave, then paused and added, "Also, for your internal HR notes, I'd recommend a less gelatinous strategic body. You jiggle when you lie." Behind her, the lights dimmed, and a final message began playing across every OHS-linked screen. A human child reading a poem titled, "What We Were Painting Before You Burned It." The voice cracked. The last line read, "You mistook our silence for weakness." But that silence, it was grief. And grief learns how to aim. Then the screen cut to a unicorn, bright, neon, laughing. And beneath it, 3 words, Phase 2 begins. The Order of Harmonious Systems did what bureaucracies always do in the face of existential crisis. They filed forms, called emergency meetings, and commissioned a 7-part ethics review series called Was It Really That Bad? Unfortunately, for them, the galaxy had already answered. Humanity didn't wait for consensus. They moved like jazz, offbeat, improvised, and perfect. Phase 2 wasn't a military strike. It was humiliation on a galactic scale. Earth's operatives now, working under the newly formed Echo Mercy Initiative, spread not troops, but truth. Entire OHS media networks were hijacked by sarcastic documentaries with titles like Children, Not Actually Combatants, Surprise, and Galactic Enlightenment and Other Fairy Tales. Hacker poets rewrote legal codes mid-broadcast. A choir of disabled human teenagers sang a hauntingly beautiful rendition of If You're Happy and You Know It, Lawyer Up in 42 alien dialects. It hit number 1 across 12 OHS-controlled planets. As reputational collapse set in, defectors rose, ambassadors, civilians, even military officers quietly handing over files, requesting asylum in exchange for testimony. Meanwhile, Rena Chase didn't raise a single weapon. She raised awareness and sarcasm as a weaponized form of justice. She toured the galaxy not as a conqueror, but as a living indictment. At every press conference, she brought a small plush toy from Hollow River, set it on the podium, and asked one question. Which of your principals let you kill this? No one ever answered. Behind her, the HMS Glitter Fury broadcasted 24 hours a day, alternating between emotional tributes and increasingly savage Earth memes. One showed the OHS emblem duct-taped to a diaper with the caption, "Look, they found their accountability." Another had a photoshopped High Minister Gilix being schooled by a human toddler wielding a crayon and a tactical pacifier. The internet, it turned out, was more powerful than plasma. Entire systems revolted without a shot fired. Civilized riots broke out in OHS territory, led by citizens singing human lullabies and carrying stuffed unicorns as banners. The OHS Council, desperate, tried to censor Earth's channels. Within hours, human hackers replaced all system error messages with, "Oops, looks like you triggered the Rena Doctrine." Internal collapse followed. Funding dried. Loyalty fractured. Cultural leaders issued apologies in panic. Gilix, under mounting pressure, attempted to open a direct line to Earth's diplomats, only to receive a response from a 10-year-old girl with a holographic eye patch and glitter war paint. "Hi. You bombed my art class. We're still mad. Please hold for someone who can legally crush you." Behind her, a screen showed Rena Chase calmly sipping tea beside a pile of classified OHS documents titled, "Things We Probably Shouldn't Have Done." Then, quietly and without fanfare, Earth delivered its first direct ultimatum. The OHS was to surrender control of all cultural narrative tools, educational systems, and policy archives related to the incident. Not for destruction, but for curation. "We don't want to erase you," Rena explained at a Senate hearing broadcast across the galaxy. "We want to make sure no one ever forgets just how stupid pride can be." With every word, another pillar of OHS authority crumbled. Their citizens weren't rebelling for power or independence. They were defecting to join a galactic moral reckoning. The OHS tried to retaliate with a propaganda video. It aired once, and was immediately re-edited by Earth's internet into a dance remix called "Oops, We Did a War Crime" that went viral in less than 5 minutes. By the end of the week, human operatives were delivering cupcakes to OHS media offices with edible frosting that read, "We told you not to poke the soft ones." No one dared eat them. Everyone read the message. Rena Chase, still smiling, marked a glowing line through another name on her list. The final phase was coming, and this time, Earth wasn't going to whisper. It was going to teach. The order of harmonious systems collapsed, not with a bang, but with a whimper so bureaucratic it was almost poetic. On day 21, after 3 weeks of relentless narrative annihilation, cultural shaming, and soft power so sharp it made orbital bombardment look subtle, the OHS formally surrendered, not in battle, but in spirit. Their flagship, Serenity. Of rule, docked with HMS Glitter Fury under a banner made entirely of apology forms. Commander Rena Chase stepped off her vessel in full diplomatic armor, flanked by Echo Mercy operatives dressed like librarians from hell, each one armed with data tablets, legal documents, and a copy of Child Protection for Dummies translated into 163 languages. There were no negotiations. There were terms. She handed them over without ceremony, without threat, just a casual tone and a smile that could melt alloy. "You'll find the names you owe us," she said. "All 6,019. We don't need your prisons. We have projects. You'll be building the future while remembering who you buried to preserve the past." And so it began. The Rena Doctrine was invoked, signed not by Earth alone, but by 147 galactic species now allied under the newly ratified Hollow Accord. Clause 1. Children of any species are beyond strategic value. They are sacred. Clause 2. Violation of Clause 1 removes all diplomatic immunity, trade status, and orbital sovereignty. Clause 3. Earth gets the final word on enforcement. OHS officials weren't executed. That would have been easy. No, they were reassigned. Every one of the 6,019 perpetrators, politicians, officers, analysts, and bean-counting technocrats, was placed under Earth supervision and deployed to reconstruction duty at the Hollow River Sanctuary. The new campus, now planetary headquarters, for the Accord, was rebuilt with materials shipped in from 90 different systems. And every worker, every OHS former official, was required to memorize the names of the children they had failed. Rena visited often. She wore civilian clothes then, boots, a hoodie, the kind of outfit that said, "Mom who's not mad, just cosmically disappointed." Her daughter Ellie often came too, with glitter stickers and judgmental glares sharp enough to dent egos. In one of the most televised moments of the post-war era, Ellie handed High Minister Gillix a mop and said, "Start with the therapy pool, and no slime trails this time." He nodded without a word. Across the stars, governments rewrote policy. Empires that once mocked Earth's chaos now studied its moral algorithms like sacred scripture. The galaxy didn't fear human weapons anymore. It feared their conviction. The final commemorative broadcast featured a simple room, a wall of holograms showing the faces of the fallen, a plaque gleaming beneath, etched in every galactic tongue. Here lie the remains of arrogance, misinterpretation, and one hell of a bad idea. Beneath that, smaller still, glowing in soft light. Humans forgive, sometimes, but only once. Pick your targets wisely. Rena Chase, older now, stood alone in the gardens of Hollow River, watching a new generation of children. Play, alien and human, loud and messy, absolutely sacred. Her sidearm was retired, her armor shelved, but her resolve, unyielding. Because some mistakes are final, and some legacies are eternal. The galaxy had learned the hard way that kindness isn't a weakness, it's a boundary, and crossing it meant war, not of bullets, but of memory. A war Earth would win again and again, with truth, sarcasm, and the sharp edge of a child's voice whispering, "You messed with the wrong kids."